Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this movie review video as part of my 31 horror movies in May series. Um, so today we're going to take a look at a movie and review a movie that's not necessarily horror. I did have it in with my horror collection, but it's definitely more of a thriller. And that's kind of a cult favorite from the early 2000s called Donnie Darko. So yeah, Donnie Darko from 2001, I believe. So this is a movie that I watched recently for the first time, and I'm going to go ahead and review it in this video. So I'll start with the setup, the premise, and the cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review on the movie itself, spoiler free as much as I can. So Donnie Darko is a 2001 American science fiction psychological thriller film written and directed by Richard Kelly and produced by Flower Films. I believe it was Richard Kelly's directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Set in October 1988, the film follows Donnie Darko, a troubled teenager who narrowly escapes a bizarre accident and has visions of Frank, a mysterious figure in a rabbit costume, who informs him that the world will end in just 28 days. Frank begins to manipulate Donnie to commit several crimes. So that's sort of the setup of it. So it starts on October 2nd, 1988. Troubled teenager Donald Donnie Darko sleepwalks outside, led by a mysterious voice. Once outside, he meets a figure in a monstrous rabbit costume who introduces himself as Frank and tells Donnie precisely that the world will end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds. Donnie wakes up the next morning on the green of a local golf course and returns home to discover a jet engine has crashed into his bedroom. His older sister Elizabeth tells him that FAA investigators do not know its origin. Over the next several days, Donnie continues to have visions of Frank, and his parents, Eddie and Rose, send him to psychotherapist Dr. Thurman. Thurman believes Donnie is detached from reality, and his visions of Frank are daylight hallucinations, symptomatic of paranoid schizophrenia. Frank asks Donnie if he believes in time travel, who in turn asks his science teacher, Dr. Kenneth Monatoff. Monatoff gives Donnie the philosophy of time travel, a book written by Roberta Sparrow, a former science teacher at school who is now seemingly a senile old woman living outside of town. Donnie also starts seeing Gretchen Ross, who recently moved into town with her mother under a new identity to escape her violent stepfather. So that might seem like a mouthful, but it's indicative of this movie. The movie's it's kind of a lot going on here. So I'll just give you the cast quick. It's actually a really good cast, a really big cast of well-known actors and actresses, both TV and movie. Obviously, you have Jake Gyllenhaal as Donnie Darko, Holmes Osborne as Eddie Darko, the dad. Maggie Gyllenhaal is Elizabeth Darko, his real life sister. DeVay Chase is Samantha Darko. Mary McDonald is Rose Darko. James Duvall is Frank the Rabbit, or Frank Anderson. Arthur Taxier is Dr. Fisher. Patrick Swayze is Jim Cunningham. Jolene Purdy is Charity Chen. Stuart Stone is Ronald Fisher. Gary Lundy is Sean Smith. Alex Greenwald is Seth Devlin. Beth Grant is Kitty Farmer. Jenna Malone is Gretchen Ross. Seth Rogen is Ricky Danford. David Moreland is Principal Cole. Noah Wiley is Professor Kenneth Monatoff. And Drew Barrymore as Karen Pomeroy. So yeah, that's a really big cast that I just gave, and that's not even everybody, but there's a lot of names there that you would recognize. Obviously, Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal. DeVay Chase, if you don't know who that is, a year later she would be the little creepy girl in The Ring, and the sequel as well, I believe. Obviously, Patrick Swayze, rest in peace. He plays a pretty significant role in the movie as like a positive like talk what do you call those people, like talk guru kind of guy. um Jim Cunningham. You have Noah Wiley and Drew Barrymore and Seth Rogen. I mean, it's just a really interesting cast from top to bottom. It's like just a mixture of all of them that they put together. Obviously, Noah Wiley from Drew Barrymore has obviously had a storied career from the time she was a little girl. Seth Rogen. I think this was his first movie. Jenna Malone um, would come to be known in later movies like oh, why can't I think of it? What's that movie series? Oh boy, I'm really drawing a blank right here. Um, Oh, okay. Well, anyway, Mary McDonald is obviously a really good actress. It's just that the whole movie's just just a combination of all the actors and actresses is one thing that really was the first thing that caught my eye really in this movie. It's like, oh wow, he's in this movie. Oh, she's in this movie. Wow, they really put together a large and prestigious cast, I would say, from TV and from movies. So. Um, the movie series I'm thinking of is with Jennifer Lawrence, and for some reason, it's absolutely escaping me right now. That Jenna Malone would end up being part of. Um, yeah, no, it's just not there. But it was a pretty big series in the early 2010s. So yeah, that's Donnie Darko in a nutshell. I know it's taken me a long time just to give you the premise and the setup and the cast. Now let's actually get into my thoughts on the movie. Like I said, this isn't really a horror movie. It's definitely, as it's described, a really big sci-fi psychological thriller. I think is the best way to describe it. Some people might dip it into the horror genre. I'm not really one of them. I think there's a couple aspects of the movie that have horror elements, but it's definitely more of a sci-fi thriller. To me, that's the best way that I would sum it up with some psychological stuff in there too. So starting with the pros, just going off the cast, I was talking about, you got to start with the performances. The performances in this movie are top notch across the board, and obviously it's led by Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays Donnie Darko. He's exceptional in this movie. It might be his best performance, to be honest with you. I've seen him in quite a few other things. He just portrays the complexities of this character about as well as you could imagine anybody else portraying it. Um, as I said, though, across the board, everybody's really good. From Maggie Gyllenhaal to Mary McDonald to Patrick Swayze and his part to Jenna Malone, Noah Wiley and Drew Barrymore. I just think everybody's spot on with their performances and what they have to do here. So that's the first thing that stands out. Acting across the board, and the characters too. They each have. I'm not going to say they all have arcs, but there's something to the characters. They give you a little something on all of them, so they're not paper thin at all. So definitely props for that. The movie's really well shot in terms of there's great visual work, great camera work that really captures the tone and the atmosphere that the director's going for in this movie. It works really well. Um, One of the aspects that I do think is, if you want to dip it more into horror, I think is the look of Frank, the rabbit here. It's just a very creepy look to the rabbit, Frank the rabbit. Really effectively creepy. And the movie also has some nice dark imagery as well in the movie that could sort of border on horror. I just think it's a very dark thriller. I think that's the best way to describe it. A really dark thriller with a lot of psychological and sci-fi vibes going on. It's a really well directed movie as well, especially for a first time director like Richard Kelly. He definitely knew what he wanted to go for, and I think he delivered pretty well. It has a really unique and interesting vision, and he really went for it. I can't think of too many other movies like this. Obviously, the movie touches on a lot of thought provoking themes throughout the movie. Some of them are more obvious on a one time watch, some of them you probably have to watch again or do a little bit more research. But aside from like the sci fi stuff that's going on in the movie, this movie obviously has a lot of layers if you haven't seen it before. There's a lot going on, which is part of its pros and its cons, as I'll get into. But there's a lot of themes in this movie, everything from teenage angst and trying to figure out their place in the world to um, you know people that try to act like they're better than other people and sort of a godly approach and ends up being the ones that are more villainous, you might say. I mean, the themes are kind of endless in this movie, to be honest with you. Those are just a couple. Um, And then finally, my final pro for the movie, you got to talk about the score and the soundtrack of the movie. Really effective, really good songs that fit the tone of the movie and are really spot on. Where a couple of the songs, like towards the end, you would have thought that the song was created for the movie, which I don't believe it was. But yeah, a lot of pros to like about Donnie Darko. Now, again, I watched the theatrical version for the very first time. So, like most people, I think that watch that version the first time, the movie kind of ended. I was kind of like, huh? There's a lot of those kind of moments in it. So let's just get into the cons with why some of that is. The movie can be hard to understand. There's a lot going on in this movie, aside from the themes that I mentioned before. It's very sci-fi. It's very there's a lot of themes in science fiction, not just in terms of time travel, but in terms of like alternate or parallel universes. Um, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm kind of drawing blanks on stuff today. Um, portals, um, world-ending apocalypses. I mean, it's just there's just a lot going on, and I don't necessarily think the movie, at least the theatrical version. I know they came out in 2004 with the director's cut, which apparently explains a little bit more when you watch that movie. But this is a movie that I had to go and do research on afterwards. I had to watch some of those YouTube videos where movies explain kind of thing. I had to do some research on my own as far as Googling things go. It can be hard to understand and to make sense of it all, especially watching the theatrical version for the first time. There's a lot of researching and understanding that most people are going to have to do after watching the movie to quote unquote get it or really understand the gist of what the movie is supposed to be and what it's trying to say. And as a result, there's probably a lot of people out there that just aren't going to do it because I think a lot of people don't feel like they should have to do a lot of research and exploring to enjoy and understand the movie. I think that's why this is more of a cult movie, has more of a cult following as opposed to like a mainstream um populist movie. Now it was very well reviewed. I think it's like 86% on the critics really liked this movie. So it was very well critically acclaimed. I don't think it was a huge box office hit though. And I think it is because it's kind of a cult movie, very sci-fi. And as I said, a lot of people just aren't going to go and put in the time and do the homework after the movie, so to speak. So I think the movie could have done a little bit better job, and apparently it did with the director's cut version that came out a few years after the theatrical movie. Um, so that's one thing, and then of course the other thing, as I already touched on, is for the purposes of this channel, it's not really a horror movie. It's not really scary. The only thing that's scary, I'll say, is they did a really excellent job with the creepiness of Frank the Rabbit here. I'm not sure where they came up with that image of the mask, but it's really effective. And if this were truly a horror movie, he would definitely be a horror villain. That would be scary and would cause a lot of nightmares, I think. But because when you actually watch the movie and kind of get the meaning of Frank the Rabbit, it loses a little bit of the horrific aspects of it, but it's still a really creepy looking rabbit. But yeah, this is definitely more of a sci-fi psychological thriller movie. A lot of time travel, lot of portals, like alternate universe portals, a lot of uh, you know just alternate universes period that are going on. And but all that being said, you can't deny the fact this is a really well made movie with a great cast. It's very well acted, very well led by Jake Gyllenhaal in his performance. Very well directed, very well shot, and very good music with a great score and a great soundtrack. There's no taking away from any of that, despite the fact the story being kind of hard to follow, and you're probably going to need two or three watches or some homework done along with a watch of this movie, at least the theatrical version, to really um, to really understand it in the way that I think a person should to appreciate it even more than the technical aspects of it. So I'm going to go ahead and give Donnie Darko a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's, like I said, from a technical standpoint, it's one of the better movies you'll see, from directing to acting to characters to themes to ideas. But again, I have to dock it a little bit because, given that I have the theatrical version, I just don't think a person should have to do the kind of homework and research they have to do to really, quote unquote, get it. Now, once I looked it up and got it, it's like, oh, okay, I can understand where they're going for, but it's really thick when it comes to the time travel and the science fiction aspects of it. Again, some people that are really into that kind of stuff, like physics and science, they'll really slop it up pretty quickly, I would guess, and really enjoy it. Other people that have to do more research and kind of figure out what they're trying to say, it's going to take a little bit longer, but good movie. I'm going to move it out of my horror collection and into the rest of my regular movies, like with Seven, uh, movies like Seven and what's the one that I'm thinking of just now? Well, The Fourth Floor, which I'm going to get here. I'm getting on a solo release, as well as The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, more thriller section. So I'm gonna. It's not a horror movie. I'm gonna take it out of my horror section, but I would recommend checking it out, especially if you don't mind having some ambiguity to it, and maybe having to do a little bit of googling and a little bit of YouTube video watching afterwards. Unless you have the uncut version, or you can get the uncut version of it that I believe came out in 2004. But 7.5 out of 10. It's a really good technically made movie for what it is. I'm not quite as blown away by it, and it's probably because I'm not a complete sci-fi nerd. I mean, I like my sci-fi to a certain extent. Star Wars, the Alien movies, at least the first couple, Star Trek to a certain extent, but when you really start going down the rabbit hole, no pun intended, with the science fiction and the just the thickness of it that's involved in this movie. It doesn't quite blow me away like I think it does for some people that are deeper into those genres. So that's my gist about Donnie Darko. Really good movie. I would recommend checking it out, and I'm glad that I own it. I'm certainly not going to sell it. I'm just going to move it to out away from my horror collection and into my other genre collections. So I hope you enjoyed this movie. Go ahead and comment down below, guys, if you've seen Donnie Darko, what your thoughts about it are. Do you get it? Did it take you a while to get it, or did you get it right away? Are you one of those people that probably got straight A's in science and math in school, and everything comes easy to you? If so, no, just kidding. But please like this video and hit the little notification bell. Please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming horror content, including the rest of this 31 horror movie series. So thank you for watching this video. Stay scared. Bye.